Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Millionaire Next Door podcast. Thank you for tuning in so much. Really focused on having conversations that matter, and I get a lot of great feedback. So thanks again for taking the time. Today we have Redeema Morris. She works on the production team that actually produces the podcast. So she helps with some of the content, helps me come up with creative ideas. Wanted to welcome her, and we talked about just having a discussion together. So we're going to launch straight into that. But welcome, Redeema. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Robert. It's absolutely a pleasure for me to join you today on your podcast show. And it's kind of funny how this came about. I remember we were having a great conversation discussing content and strategy and marketing. And then somehow I was just really intrigued by you, your journey, and the things that you were talking about. And the conversation started flowing so well. And we were kind of like, hey, this could be a really good podcast episode.
Yeah, 100%. I remember that. So thanks. Here we are actually doing that. So, and it has been a big journey, but and you had a lot of questions. So I'd love to answer as candidly as I can, anything, and share a bit of my journey or whatever you'd like to ask me. Ask away.
Well, thank you. And I think with that being said, today's episode is truly going to let your listeners know about, who is the man behind the mic. You have a great podcast show, The Millionaire Next Door, but I think, at this point, let's knock on that door, open it, and dive deep into your story, your journey, and really take some pretty cool insights and learnings from it. So why don't we begin with, who is Robert? Talk to me about where did you grow up and what your childhood was like.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do it. Well, I live in Pasadena, California. I live in Southern California. I grew up in Santa Monica. It's a beachside town. It's pretty hipped up now. So it was a smaller, sleepier kind of beach town when I grew up. It was a really great childhood. We were by the ocean. There was a lot of ocean sports. We had a great high school. I went to school. There was the Malibu and Santa Monica Unified School District. So we had a great thing going on. A lot of surfing was real big, beach volleyball, a lot of Southern California things, all the big sports. At any rate, I grew up and it was a really nice community. I will say one of the things that was a fairly seminal experience was there is a north side of Santa Monica that's pretty well off. And there's a couple of streets, Montana, Wilshire, that are pretty clear dividing lines of people north of that have a lot of money, people south of that, not so much. A lot of apartments, I grew up in an apartment. I never even lived in a house until I bought my first house at 33. But having said that, we were really mixed too in terms of ethnicity. Before when I went off to college, it wasn't nearly. So we had everyone there. It was great. I mean, that was, in retrospect, a really great experience. I do remember as a kid, though, like one time somebody, kind of a spoiled kid with a lot of money, kind of, giving me a hard time of how we didn't have. And when you're like 14 years old, those kind of experiences are impactful. And for what it was worth, it was a powerful motivator to focus some of my energies. And I knew I don't think my parents ever made more than 50 grand between them. So I had some different goals for myself but I cannot complain about the childhood. It was right there. Now that area is really hip. It's super overpriced. It's just crazy to go park out there. I'm grateful. I live out in Pasadena. The lots are bigger. We have the San Gabriel Mountains. So, but that's where I grew up. Yeah. And that's, kind of the original story there.
That's awesome. How was your family life like? Do you have any siblings?
Uh, no siblings. I was an only child syndrome. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So that was interesting. Then when it came time to raise my own family, I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was very determined. I didn't want to just have one child. So we were really blessed to have two. I've got a son and a daughter. My son is 22. He's a senior in college. He's just finishing. He's going to graduate in June of this year. I'm actually leaving town next week. I'm going to go meet him up in Northern California, and we're going to hang out and ski for a week, which we really enjoy doing together. And I'm just, I guess I'm super jazzed that my 22-year-old son wants to hang out with his dad on spring break. I'm probably going to cover most all the expenses, granted, but it still should be really great. It's that time. My daughter is 20. She's at a local junior college, and she's really awesome too. And I've been married 25 years now, so that's my wife's been a public educator for a long time, and she's super dedicated. She's really, really into it. It is a tough environment. So honestly, around the dinner table, I hear some of these stories of the challenges, and I'm like, well, I work with really competent people, and things are I don't have these complaints. I mean, I honestly have to pinch myself most days at how good things are, but I'm really committed to helping people, and I've been on a pretty lengthy journey over many years that, thematically, the Millionaire Next Door podcast is the overnight 25-year or 30-year success story. So it's a lot of fundamentals that stack together. And I feel like I embody that and try and convey some of that. But that's kind of been the story of my life, a lot of consistency, and hope that gives you a little insight into me and what you're asking.
Absolutely. And I think that's the next segment that I'd love to explore. It's kind of like your professional career, and how did you get into the financial world? And before that, how did you decide that, hey, this is the career path that I want to take?
Yeah. And it's funny to reflect on that now as you see like a 22-year-old and 20-year-old. How do you know? I will tell you this. I originally had no idea whatsoever I'd be doing this. I was always very good with writing and things like that, and I did competitive speech and debate, and I thought I'd probably go to law school, and got admitted to several law schools, but sort of got talked out of that by some attorneys that shared some stories of how that wasn't the greatest life, and I've always been interested in that. But at any rate, as an undergraduate, I had a very hardcore science, University of California discipline, organic chemistry and physics, and a lot of rigorous discipline stuff that I think was really good. And I have a huge fascination with science and the body and the mind and all that kind of stuff. So that's really good. Where I ended up graduating and where I first got my real job, which sometimes that's how your career flows. You just sort of get this, you may have these grand plans, but if there's a job opening and you take it. I got a master's degree in public policy, and then I was sort of being trained to maybe be in city management or a city manager or something like that. I got placed in a finance department, local government finance, and I was an analyst, and we just went into numbers in extreme detail. I had spreadsheets going every which way. I use Excel and stuff now, but nowhere near. I had macros created. I went into everything, budgets, all their liabilities, funding of bonds, all kinds of payroll costs, pensions, every kind of number. And I had relationships with people. So I was really deep as an analyst, and that was great training. And then I had this background, undergrad, in a lot of science, where there was a lot of just rigorous, find out what's going on, get to the bottom of it, ask questions, scientific method. And a lot of my job in finance was really figure out what was going on in these departments. And I had a initial boss who hired me and said, you figure out what in the world's going on here. I don't care how, far high up the totem pole, just figure it out and I'll cover your back. So I did. And she said if you can do that, you're going to be really successful here. If you can't, that's not going to work out. Well, I did that, and I did that for about 7 years. I was just really deep in a lot of spreadsheets. And interestingly, I work with some of those people who are still there. Some of them have now retired off really nice pensions at this age. So I probably could have been there. I started doing a lot of financial planning and whatnot for the entity because a lot of our initial decisions were sort of they were looking at the cost, but I think it was sort of one time, and they didn't really realize that some of these decisions might reverberate for 15, 20, 25 years, and that really needed to be laid out. So we started down that road. But what also started to happen with me is I was looking for something else, something more entrepreneurial, just a different skill set than what we were on. We were entrepreneurial within a public sector finance, but at any rate, I started taking classes at UCLA in financial planning, leading to it's called a PFP credential, which kind of qualifies you to sit for the CFP exam. And I figured I got very deep into it. I was good with the analysis, with the numbers, with the concepts, with the legal, issues and stuff like that. What I didn't know is if I could go into business for myself, be an entrepreneur, just like any small business, right? The rate of success is pretty low, And so, but after a lot of thought, I went through that for about 2 years. I was still working and being paid pretty well. So it was a really big decision for me to leave that really secure position and ultimately go into financial planning or investment management. I did that 28 years ago. And the only real obstacle or any hesitation at first, I got hired on at a lot of places. They wanted to bring me on. Was just, could I make it? Just like, you could be a great doctor, a great lawyer, but if you don't have a business, you could be the smartest person. I didn't know, but I was still young enough where I figured it's okay. Let's take this chance. Let's go for it. Let's feel the fear. Let's get out of the comfort zone. Interestingly, I went into that program. I started at Merrill Lynch. I was there for many years, went through their training program, never looked back, never had a regret. I don't think I even had a half an hour of a regret. I was really ready for that. So that was cool. I will say, though, that first 10 or maybe even 15 years, I was trained about as well as you possibly could, the pedigree. It was still really difficult to launch that career and get to a level of success. And it took a long time before I learned and really, really developed and refined and optimized a process that's very unique and that really solves all the needs. And that's still, by the way, an ongoing process. I've been doing it 28 years, and it is very, very dialed in. But I'm always looking to make it better, somewhat better, some consistent improvement. Or, a lot of it's really evolved, I think, in those early years and a lot of the mid-career, all that technical expertise, all that kind of stuff. That's really important. But a lot of the focus now, all that's assumed, and I have all that, but a lot of it's on the bedside manner, connecting with people. Certainly post-COVID, just had an extensive conversation with someone yesterday, mature individual, and we were talking through the challenges of today's markets. And, after some time and peeling back, found that it was really a lot of legacy issues. He had received a diagnosis of something, and he really wasn't focused on that, but it was really very much time for an adult conversation and to button these things up. That wasn't about his allocations, but, it might have taken me all these years to really be able to have that kind of conversation and effectively guide him and get him on that path and get him to take that action that is pretty much more important than some of those other ones. So, that's how I started in this business. I took that kind of hard left turn, so to speak. Never regretted it. It took a lot longer than I might have thought, but now I literally, I don't even have to do this anymore. I feel like I get to do this, and that's a big privilege. So.
And that's awesome. And I think, we want to dive into that privilege and your level of success and really understand, what were some of the habits and work ethics that you would say really helped you, shape this level of success and your career?
A number from, I think always just a persistence, a real stick-to-itiveness, a lot of determination, a lot of curiosity. Even that first boss, my first real, telling me, I don't care if it's the police chief sticking a gun at you saying, whatever. It's like, you figure it out. That's your job. So I had a lot of, I was always aggressive with figuring out the truth and really trying to understand things and questioning and asking a lot of questions. And I was that guy in class who asked a ton of questions and, was really curious. So might have been annoying, but I found it served me well. As time evolved, I think that served me really well. Just a sincerity, but working on the people aspect, how to connect better. A lot of other personal habits that I've really focused. Maybe I had kind of a renaissance, through COVID and post-COVID. We had some time to think about things. I think trying to do my very best to ultimately take impeccable care of myself where I can. A lot of people get very beat down, and burn out, or they suffer their health, or trade that for money. I try and be really structured, between workouts, between sleep, between nutrition, just recovery, just other stuff, spiritually, emotionally, things like that to balance myself. And, the point being, if I don't do that for myself, then I'm not going to be in a position to do that for my family or my children or my clients so it's really about serving them if I just take good care of myself, and you got to lead by example. So I do my best to prioritize that. It's a very busy, practice that I run, and there's a lot of demands, but trying to have some sort of non-negotiables, certainly in the morning. I've talked a little bit on the podcast about that, but things that just keep me optimal. I don't want to come in 85%, every day is the big day, right? Every day is the competition or I just want to show up and be attentive and not sleep deprived or run down or, we don't always have the luxury of, sometimes we do have to go through that, but I really try and focus on that. That's become a habit that's really important and helps me do a good job. And, it's really about serving others, but serving yourself. And again, on the airplane, right? If it's going down or getting into trouble, they do tell you, even if your child or infant's there, they say, put the mask on yourself first, right? That's their exact, because you're not going to be of any good to anybody if you're out. So those are a few things that I've really tried to focus on.
That's awesome. And I think these are, again, really great tips and insights for us to know about and be aware of. I think it would be great that we jump into sort of the different life stages and different financial challenges that one might come across in each age group. So, since I'm in my 20s, I would love to know. I'm still kind of trying to understand how money works. I don't have too much knowledge. So now when I'm speaking to someone like you, who obviously has great amount of expertise and experience, when you were 20, what is one thing that you wish you would have learned back then?
Good question. And I do engage folks in their 20s quite a bit. Sometimes we get introduced to a client's adult children, or meet someone or someone who's younger. And what's really beautiful, they're young, but they've got all that time. And the time is a gigantic factor in these formulas of, the accumulation of wealth. And you can accomplish anything you want if you have a long enough time frame and a plan, I think. So, kind of engaging on that level, but it really excites me because I really remember back to that time in my life. We didn't come from very much money, I didn't really have anything. I had to do it all myself. It's really all first generation. When I was at that job doing the spreadsheet, starting to study it, I did have access to my first job where they, gave me, it was a 457, but it was a qualified plan, kind of like a 401k or a 403b. Mm-hmm. And I was allowed to contribute. I understood the tax deferral and then the income offset, and there was some type of a match. And I maxed that thing out, because I wasn't paid great, but I had if we took that off the top, kind of like taking care of yourself, right, first to serve others, you do that, that money's out of your net income, but right, it's packed away. And it started to do well. There was a bit of a bull market there. And I sort of was able to connect those dots and see how that could flow. And, markets do not move in a straight line. They were moving a straight line up at that point. It was very encouraging. But I got it. And maxing those things out, I think, is really important discipline. It's just like saying, do the workout, consistently. You can miss a day or something like that, but you maybe don't miss 2 days in a row, but really serving yourself. That was a huge lesson. Get that going. I've seen teachers come over. I've seen people, 7-figure accounts, after many years. There's other people making substantially more. There's other people who spend it all. So I was always pretty good on the fiscal discipline side of things. But it's kind of like if you get the workout, you do those other things, or you're reading well, you can have that 20% that's, just fun, devil's food cake, whatever, something that's probably not optimal health. But I don't know if that gets to the heart of your question, but I'd say that's a really important one. Live within your means. And if you can do these tax deferred, IRAs or something at work, if you're self-employed, you can do more. I do work with some people in their 20s who are maybe clients of adult children or whatnot, and it's really encouraging because I feel like if they just listen to that advice, but I literally remember being there. And, when you're looking ahead, it's like, wow, how in the world is this going to happen? So I hope that helps, but yeah.
It does. And you talking about like fiscal discipline. I was just about to touch upon that. So I think, for me and my age group, we're huge on spending, and our emphasis is on experiencing life, whether that's traveling or eating out or going out. So is there a right way to sort of balance, living life now while saving for the future?
I think so. I think it's individualistic. I wouldn't want to sacrifice those life experiences, so if you can go to Europe and travel with some people, that's the best way in the world to learn. And if it costs you some money, you're healthy, go for it. Excuse me, eat well, do what you like. I'm not into a lot of like show off material possessions, like a really expensive car. I just don't get that, but that's just a personal thing. So
Right.
I think you should go out and live these experiences, but I do think people are either born or that, some people are pretty fiscally disciplined. Some people want to spend every penny. There's, you can even see it with your own children. They could behave completely different, yet they're raised in the same exact environment. So, it's a tough one. I mean, sometimes when I start working with someone, you can sense their discipline, but if you take care of the stuff that needs to happen, then you can, then go ahead and do all those other things. I'm not saying don't do those. In fact, we have clients all the time that call for, bucket list travel or things like that. And I'm like, go ahead, spend the, $20K, go to the, the Azores, or, go on to this cruise, or, whatever you want. So, I'd say enjoy life. Nothing's for certain, but, if you can take care of those fundamentals too, I think you want to do that. The fitness, getting money saved away. I think then you've sort of, I was always, what's this? I always said to eat the worm first, do the difficult thing first, get that done, and then go out and play. And I was always structured, even as a kid, get the homework done and then go crazy and you can go play. And that's awesome. I know some people put the other up front and then they do it later at the last minute. And maybe that's how their motivations work. But I think the former probably works a little bit better. That's more my style. But yeah, don't short yourself on those things. But I would do both. And because otherwise it catches up really quickly. I don't know if you've seen these numbers of if you wait 5 years.
Yeah.
I don't have the numbers right in front of me. If you wait a few years and start saving and doing it then, like you have to put in dramatically more and you still come out behind. So in my own case, I want to say it was probably late 20s to early. I had access to something like that and I did it right away and I maxed it out. I would say do it, and I don't think you'll regret it. And then you can be pretty far along, your way. But the other thing that really shocks me is just inflation and how expensive everything is
Right.
now. And not to date myself from, an age perspective, but my gosh, when I look at like what young people have to pay for an apartment or housing seems unaffordable. I get it. I don't know what I would do. Um, it's daunting. So a lot of people are just spending it, right? Or they're living in a Sprinter van and doing, because they're like, I can't afford a home. That's a real challenge, but we talk through things like that, and I try and give them the best wisdom and I can. But those plans are great if you can do it, and I think you will start to see progress. Yep.
Absolutely. I love everything that you said. I think the whole idea is having a bit of balance between living life and also, preparing financially. The thing that you mentioned about housing, yes, it's crazy expensive. I'm in Toronto, so, it's extremely expensive over here. So I think I'm definitely gonna book an appointment with you and meet you on the side to discuss housing options and, do all that financial planning. But another important phase of life that comes around, when you're in your late 20s, early 30s, is getting married. And I'm
Mm.
actually thinking about, getting married shortly. And I just want to know from your perspective, what's the first step you recommend couples to take to get on the same page about money?
I don't know that we took all these steps to get on the same page. I remember we were each living separately. We did move into together for a year before. So we discovered whether cohabitation was going to work, and it did. So I think we started getting it. But I later learned to her mom's. She's very traditional Midwest. That was a real, she was concerned about that, but it all worked out fine. I think it mostly kind of comes down to values. If you're living together, you can see. I mean, I'm not saying you have to live together, but just the values, that you have things in common, that you're not wildly off on different ends. When it comes to the actual wedding, I think you should plan your dream wedding, but I do see there's these 100,000 to it, these total splurge weddings that I've never super been comfortable with, and we have a place down in Del Mar, California. It's kind of a nice resort, and I will literally see these dream weddings that people set up while we're in like our jacuzzi, and I might go by 3 or 4 hours, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there goes 7 figures, that kind of thing, and I'm like, and then we're off to the next thing. We were able to sort of plan ours, and we did it all on our own. Just on a personal note, we were both kind of prudent about it. We wanted to be really nice and personal. We had a wedding planner. She ended up getting a serious cancer and passed away during the planning stage. So we had to do it all of ourselves. And we met in a community service organization called the Pasadena JCs, or Junior Chamber of Commerce. And we would plan all these committees and service events where you had to plan budgets. So we kind of siloed all this out, the dinner, where we were going to stay. We got super fortunate. But I think it boils down to sort of values and comfort, and, what are you on the same page, and what do you want? We were, we wanted a home. Eventually we wanted kids. We didn't want to change things up. But I'd focus on making sure you're with the right person, and then you'll figure it out. But we never really sat down and looked through, everything. We just, yeah, that's what I did. I don't know if that helps.
Hey, 25 years sounds like it turned out great. On that note, what's the secret?
What is the secret to 25 years?
Yeah, and
Oh,
counting.
oh, jeez. So I'm trying to figure it out. It's chemistry. It's just, I think there's some luck. I think it's a dance too, I mean, I'm not going to say there haven't been a couple moments that have been a little bit challenging, but you got to work through that. I think just the values, the type of person, it worked out just that we have children together, a lot of committed values. We shared those. We have a lot of differences between us too. But we just get along great, and we really respect one another, and we give each other our own space to do what we need to do. I grew up, for example, in the beach community, and if I see the water of the ocean, I don't care how cold, I'm going to get in. She will not get in unless it's like 81 degrees. So, we're just wired a little bit different. But what is the secret? Just a lot of give and take, a lot of patience, a lot of listening. Some luck too. I think other people go into it with all those awesome intentions, and then you know, life transpires and things happen, and it's challenging. And it's when you think about it over those years, you each develop as a person, and you're not the same exact person you were back then. And you should be allowed to evolve, but hopefully you evolve together and you work it out. But I think just checking in, just showing up for each other each day, um, doing your best. But yeah, I've been really fortunate. Yeah. So
I love that. That's awesome. It sounds like you and your wife have a beautiful story, and I wish you another 25 years together.
that'd be great.
You mentioned children, so I'd love to know, for people who are looking to have children from a financial perspective, is there something that they should be prepared for or thinking about before starting a family?
That's a good question. And again, I'm probably not the best. I can tell you my story and then give you my perspective now. Um, I was an only child, so I didn't have a lot of. I had some cousins and stuff, but I didn't have a big family. I had no idea how I was going to be a parent. Um, but we did have our careers going, and that was pretty stable, and that was nice to have some security and be through your education and that kind of thing, and the support of family. I think all that's really important. Having said that, yeah, we started trying, and then we were successful on the first try, but there were some challenges. There was honestly some challenges. She had some gestational diabetes. She had a high risk pregnancy. Our first one was born 6 weeks early. We had to leave him at the NICU, the intense,
Right.
literally in one of those incubators. We were feeding my son, who we're gone skiing with, and but literally with like an eyedropper. He was so small, and then but 6 weeks later, we took him home, and that was great. We were not. I took those classes, Lamont. I mean, we were really unprepared. I don't know how you prepare for that. It's such a life changer. So I will tell you a funny story. This is probably just me personally, but when we were taking him out of the hospital, finally, I mean, we were really excited, but they're like, all right, you're on your way, good luck. And I remember like they're wheeling we're going out, and I'm thinking, hold on a minute. You don't understand. Like, we're not ready. Like, and then I'm thinking, everybody says that. Nobody's ready. And then I was in my own mind, I was like, no, I don't think you understand. I know thousands of people leave here every year and feel that way, but I don't think you understand. I'm even less prepared than any of them. I'm concerned that I don't know what I'm doing. Well, then it occurred, probably everybody feels that way too. So we really didn't know. You get home, the baby, your sleep's disrupted. You're putting little things on the furniture so they don't bang into themselves. One time he hit a coffee table, my son. He split open his cheek. Then they had to do surgery. I remember they had to strap him to a table. That was one of the most challenging things I've ever had to experience while he's screaming like a 3-year-old. We used a plastic surgeon because apparently it would be less likely to get a scar. But just be patient. Do it when you're ready. It's still a big miracle when you actually see it occur. It blows my mind what goes on to produce a child, in a woman's body and the whole thing. I would say minimize stress, just live well. Do what you can. It's not even a given, right? If you're trying, a lot of people struggle and, have challenges around that. So we really, the second time was a bit easier, but it's still, many years ago, right, in childbirth, a big percentage of women would just die, right, in childbirth. So I don't know. There's probably better. We had those books, what to expect when you're expecting, all this kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't know how you prepare. I think just take really good care of yourself. Be positive. if you're ready to do it at a younger age, just do it. It's a miracle. It's mind blowing. It worked out great, but that's looking back on it. Still raising them was still really difficult. I mean, like the grandparents are always usually so much more casual. When you're freaking out, they're like, "Oh, it's not that big a deal." So I guess someday that'll be fun to be that. Hey, we've seen this. Like, we don't need to stress about that. That's not that big of a deal. It's going to work out. But I don't know if that helps you, but that was my path. I went for it. Eventually, you figure it out. you know.
No, that sounds great. I think you just got to take it step by step and then see what life sort of throws onto you in your way. Now looking at your life as a whole, do you have any like favorite quotes that you live by or something to really summarize what your journey's been like?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there's several that I like a lot. One I like is how you do anything is how you do everything. And I ruminate on that. Even little things, it's kind of a reflection of how you do everything. I'll give you a couple more, but one I really like comes from Yogi Berra, famous bass, but he was known for all these great quotes, but he says you could observe a lot just by watching. So that's funny in and of itself, but we have a very distinct process. I call it our process, objective, unemotional, rules-based. A lot of it is just watching what goes on and observing and paying close attention to those nuances. But I did have a good experience. I shared one that was a huge hit. I had no idea. I was up in Alta, Utah, and with one of the guests we had on here, Olympic skier. Her name is Kristen Ulmer, and she was on several episodes ago. She asked me for one at a function we did, and I shared there's a song from Tom Petty called "Running Down a Dream," and she really liked it. So I don't know if you know the song, but it's pretty awesome if you put it on the car. But that feels very thematic. I've always been very driven and motivated, and you're running down a dream. He says it never would come to me, working on a mystery. I'll go wherever it leads. I just think it's a great quote for life. You're kind of charging ahead. We have a plan, but we're still just charging ahead in uncharted territories. And you gotta be comfortable with that and learn how to maybe be out of your comfort zone. When I shared that with the group, she literally, she kind of broke down and cried. It was so impactful for her. I think it could mean different things to different people, but that's one of my favorite. I may just crank that up later today on the car. So
No, that's great. I think we're really trying to, dig deep into your personality and really get to know who you are. On that note, I think we'll definitely need like a part 2 to this episode because we can't cover everything that, I wanted to ask and maybe touch upon all the different life stages. So, Robert, I think how we can end this episode off with is really just understand, what inspired you to create this podcast show.
What inspired me? There was a lot of interesting stuff that happened for me through COVID, that break, right? We were working from home. We were essential workers. People weren't coming into the office. You can go on and on about all the weird adjustments that happened. I started listening to a number of podcasts and found I really enjoyed it. There's some incredible quality out there. I just thought I'd try it out and see how that worked as a form of communication, and got into it. I wanted to share a lot of the wisdom, have an open discussion, not have it be super scripted, just share wisdom, and then sort of that run down a dream. We're about 70 episodes in now, and so I never would have dreamed I'd interview a world-class Olympic skier, PJ Nestler, who's an incredible trainer of Navy SEALs, and a bunch of folks. We just had private infrastructure dealing with managers who were managing stuff for very large endowments and sovereign wealth funds and going deep into their process. And I wanted to share my practice, some of the nuances that go deeper of what we do in the process and the value and what that is. So that's what inspired me. But the production team has made it really simple for me to do because you do all the editing. I get a lot of great feedback from folks, that's listened to in like 111 countries. Most of these folks I'll never meet. I've got some clients who, we've emailed them 70 episodes. They're like, "Oh, that's you? I didn't know that." And, I have another guy who heard the one with the extreme skier, and he's like a 86, 87-year-old, not in great health in Texas, but he was like, "Man, I love that episode with that adrenaline junkie." So you never know. I'm just looking to have really great conversations. And for the audience, for anyone who's listening, if there's other areas you want to know about or questions, please let me know and I'll try and address them in an open format. But I think it's I've been really inspired some of the podcasts I can listen to, like there's a guy, Dr. Mark Hyman, and he's just incredible on the health. Andrew Huberman, who's a professor at Stanford. It's like you're sitting in his class, but it's cutting edge science, and I can listen when I'm driving around or walking the dog or whatnot. So that kind of inspired. I'm not at that level, but it's been an incredible journey. It's been really fun. And I don't really know what the future topics are going to come up with, but I'm trying to bring relevant things that I'm seeing in my life that can help folks. This was kind of my story, but also, to you, what are the steps? What advice would you give? So I'm glad to share that, but that's what has inspired me. And that the fact that people are listening, and it kind of blew me away to see all these foreign countries in every state. So we'll see where it goes. I like to say it's all an experiment.
I love that. And Robert, truly, it has been an absolute pleasure, for me to be part of your journey in a little way and just be able to listen to all of your insights and experiences. I think I'm going to take a lot of knowledge away from you today. And this was really, really fun. And I hope you had a fantastic time too.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for letting me tell the story and your curiosity. And I'm always happy to talk. And I do get inspired trying to help folks at your stage, and quite honestly, sometimes it's easier when they're not your own kids. They might not listen to you as much. So a lot of people will relate to how that works out. But always happy to share. Thanks, folks, for listening to this. I hope it's been helpful, and thrilled. I'd love to do a part 2 if if that makes sense. So
thank you so much, Robert.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for being here, Radima, and thanks everyone to listening, and make it a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Millionaire Next Door podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Signature Estate and Investment Advisors. Signature Estate and Investment Advisors, LLC, SEIA, is an SEC-registered investment advisor. However, such registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and no inference to the contrary should be made. Securities offered through Signature Estate Securities, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through SEIA, LLC, 2121 Avenue of the Stars, Suite 1600, Los Angeles, California, 90067. Telephone number 310-712-2323.